was elected not to complete the season. The other huge upset in round one of Top Fuel, Don Prudhomme, who 2 weeks ago dominated in Maple Grove. He smoked the tires right off the starting line. His opponent, Jimmy, next lost the floor belt, but the snake was done for the day. These clutches are so complicated. Sometimes they have a mind of their own.
Yeah, they really are, Steve. You know, it's a new day, and we're having trouble yesterday. We had to change the supercharger to some things. I think that kind of threw John and them off a little bit. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to do, and, you know, it's drag racing.
This is Maurice DuPont, and I think he would feel that drag racing's been pretty good to him today with that big upset victory. In fact, his first ever round victory in NHRA Winston competition. We saw him beat Eddie Hill just a moment ago. Here in round number 2, he has got quite a challenge facing 26-year-old Pat Austin. Austin in the far lane of the racetrack. In the Winston point standings, Kenny Bernstein in number 2 is the only man with a shot at stopping Joe Amato in his quest for an unprecedented 4th Winston Top Fuel title. In the first round of Top Fuel here at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals, DuPont defeated Hill. We saw that run. Pat Austin upset Tommy Johnson Jr. Frank Hawley defeated Jim Head. And Tom McEwen whipped up on Cruz Pendragon. The other side of the eliminations ladder finds the surprise number 2 qualifier in the second round. He defeated Laurie Johns in round 1. Kenny Bernstein topped Gene Snow. Joe Amato over Connie Coletta. And as you saw, Jimmy Nix got the break when he defeated Don Prudhomme. Here is Maurice DuPont at the wheel of the Hammer Time car, sponsored by the Rapstar MC Hammer, and that is the lady Kim LaHaye, helping out car owner Larry Frazier, and you heard Maurice DuPont admit the results were immediate. In fact, he qualified 16th at a 5:09, the quickest field in Top Fuel history. Pat Austin's got quite a chore driving 2 different cars, an alcohol funny car and the Top Fuel dragster. The Alky funny car has provided Pat with a stepping stone to stardom. A total of 42 national event victories to his credit, and the young man is just starting on a career in Top Fuel Eliminator. In round number 2 of alcohol funny car competition, he faced Al DePozo. Austin in the far lane got an advantage off the starting line. He extended it, and then the Castro whipped up a 6:01. Low elapsed time of that round of eliminations at over 2:33 to move Pat into the final 4. Now in round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator, driving the car that his dad bought from the late Gary Ormsby. The entire Ormsby operation is now Walt Austin Racing. Maurice DuPont trying to stop Pat Austin. Not today. As his brother Mike looks on, Pat Austin records a 5:02 at 283 miles an hour, still looking for his first ever 4-second elapsed time. The 1991 NHRA AC Delco Heartland Nationals is being brought to you by AC Delco Automotive Parts. AC Delco, it's like buying time. And by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Goodyear, the unanimous choice of all the professional NHRA World Champions, from Top Fuel to Pro Stock. For Top Fuel Racing, coming up next. On board signing autographs, but certainly feeling the pressure of Jim White, the Hawaiian punch card, trying to catch him in the points chase. Now let's go to the far end of the racetrack. And Steve Evans.
Pat Austin still hoping for his first 4-second run, but these 5.0s are still mowing him down at 5:02.
They're tough. They said, the guys said that we're just going to run another 02 and it should get us by the semis, and I mean into the semis, and it did, but that 4-second run's going to come just at the right time.
The young Pat Austin reflecting his confidence in his crew chief, Lee Beard. Here is Tom McEwen, the veteran returning to the wars of Top Fuel Racing with the Mobil 1 car owned by Boston Red Sox slugger Jack Clark. His competition, the operator of the drag racing school down in Gainesville, Florida, the driver of the Coors Light car owned by Darrell Gwynn, Frank Hawley. He qualified 4th with a 4:97. Well, Tom McEwen used identically the same time, just about 4/1000ths of a second slower, a 4:97 to qualify number 5. Here in the second round, McEwen is hoping to duplicate the outstanding reaction time he had in the first round when he was only 45/1000ths of a second off of perfect. But Hawley, who teaches other people how to drive, is pretty good himself. Hawley in the far lane, McEwen in the near lane. Lane choice not being a factor at the moment. Close race, and McEwen pulls it out in the last few feet. His elapsed time, a 5:03 at 2:74. The good reaction time went to Hawley. You can see the car in the far lane moved first, perceptibly an advantage over McEwen. But the veteran was not about ready to give up. He kept his foot all the way to the firewall until at the finish line by just a matter of inches. In fact, it was only 1/1000th of a second margin of victory going to Tom McEwen in the near lane.
Tom McEwen just experienced what it's like to win a drag race by 1/1000th of a second.
I couldn't tell who won down at the end. It was it could have gone either way, and I wouldn't have, I'd have been upset, but it was a good drag race, and that's what I like.
And good driving, both of you off the mark. He was a little ahead. He had to catch him.
Yeah, I don't know what the reaction times were. I probably used up my 4:45 that first round. I probably run a 5:50 that time or something, but we'll take it, and we're ready. We'll just hope we can go the whole day like this.
Tom McEwen went the whole day just like this at Englishtown back in the middle of the season when he captured the Summer Nationals crowd. Here's our next pair, the number 2 qualifier, Corey McClelland. The competition for him, the man in the thick of that Winston points chase, Kenny Bernstein, the Budweiser King. Kenny needs every break he can get, not only at this event, but at the 2 more races remaining this season. He did not qualify particularly well here. Number 10, only able to run a 5:03, while young Corey McClelland clicked off a 4:94, surprising not only himself, but everybody else in his qualifying effort. Corey slowed a bit in round number 1. He was only able to run a 5:05 in defeating Laurie Johns. Bernstein in the near lane. They're both set. And the engine explodes for Corey McClelland, and Bernstein goes up in smoke. He doesn't know where Corey Mack is and drives it all the way through with the tires ablaze. Kenny advances to the final 4 while Corey Mack slows to a halt, bringing a disappointing end to his most successful performance weekend ever. The supercharger laying off to one side, a result of the explosion. Watch again, the blue and white car in the far lane. Bang, there goes the supercharger, bringing an end to Corey McClelland's day. Meanwhile, Joe Amato, sitting on the pad, had a bird's eye view of the big break for Bernstein. He knows he's got to win to keep pace. Steve?
You're having such a wonderful day, and kaboom, a real ear ringer. Maybe you can show us on the motor what's happened and the damage that you've experienced here.
Well, in the past, the blower has usually been blowing off from the clutch coming down too hard on the motor and bringing the RPM down, and virtually something has to go. But it looks like this time the mags went bad and it crossfired, and once it fills everything full of fuel and there's nothing for the spark to go off on, it just loads up with fuel, and once the spark does hit it, boom, there goes the whole motor.
Could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
And the problems continue to plague Corey McClelland as they have all season long. Jimmy Nix, ready for another big upset. Topeka, Kansas for the AC Delco Heartland Nationals, and we're just joining a standing room only crowd of NHRA Winston drag racing fans that are enthusiastic in their support of their superstars like Joe Amato. And we're riding on board the Valvoline Special, Jerry Amato, backing Joe into his tracks after the burnout. There in the far lane, you see the competition for Joe. That is Jimmy Nix. Now it's time for Joe's Army to make a final check of that race motor. There is the general. That is what he calls his crew chief, Tim Richards. Bob Kreitz, the crew chief for Jimmy Nix. They're longtime friends, former competitors back in the state of Oklahoma. Nix, from his number 11 qualifying spot, has given away a lot in performance. He had a 5:04. Joe Amato qualified 3rd with a 4:96. Our vantage point atop the wing shows you the length of this car, 300-inch wheelbase stretching from the center of the rear axle to the center of the front wheels. Amato in the near lane, creeping forward into those infrared beams across the starting line. They're both set, and Amato with a giant hole shot. You just rode through a quarter-mile run at over 281 miles an hour with Joe Amato, and he slowed to a 5:05. Jimmy Nix, performance-wise, was close. He had a 5:06, but you ask what's a hole shot? Watch it replay. This is a classic example. Joe reacted to the green light a quarter of a second quicker than Jimmy Nix. That moves Joe into a Final Four confrontation with his closest Winston Points competitor, Kenny Bernstein. The other pair finds a battle of youth versus experience. Tom McEwen against Pat Austin. Austin holding lane choice. Steve?
Kenny Bernstein next.
Yeah, it's every round he wins, we win. It's a lot of pressure, man. When you're standing there watching him, he smokes the tires, the other guy blows up. I mean, we're going to have to make our own luck, I guess.
Well, Joe Amato has spent an entire season doing just that. He's got a substantial lead in the Winston Point standing. Time now for round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator. This is Jim White, the low qualifier. He is racing this man, Ed McCulloch, at the wheel of the Otter Pops Olds, owned by Larry Miner. You're looking at the fastest funny car in the world. He set the record at over 289 miles an hour earlier this season at Indianapolis Raceway Park. But with the strong headwind blowing today, reaching those kind of speeds may be difficult. Ed McCulloch last season finished number 2 in the Winston Point standings, but right now he is locked in the 5th spot. Jim White is truly the only driver that has a chance at catching John Force, and he's got to keep the pressure on the reigning Winston champ. In round 1, he defeated Gary Bolger to advance here to the second round. McCulloch had a strong run to beat Whit Bazemore. Mike Dunn defeated Tom Hoover, while 21-year-old Del Worsham, headed for Rookie of the Year honors, defeated Al Hoffman. Mark Oswald beat Jim Murphy on the other side of the ladder. Flash Gordon Minio topped Richard Hartman. We'll have more on that in just a moment. Winston Points leader John Force over Jerry Caminito, and Chuck Etchels defeated Gary Densham. This is the last season that you'll see Hawaiian Punch on the side of that Dodge Daytona owned by Roland Leong. Sponsorship ending at the end of this season, and Roland obviously wants to keep this team together, particularly this man, Wes Cerny, who Jim White attributes a great deal of their success. White qualified number 1 with a 5:16, while McCulloch ran a 5:37 to qualify in the number 8 spot. Both drivers now headed towards the starting line. The top of the Christmas tree indicating when they get into the pre-stage position. That indicates that they're about 6 inches away from the actual starting line. That's when the second light at the top of the tree comes on. Either driver moving, they're both taking their time. Starter Buster Couch turning and walking away, indicating he's saying, now it's up to you guys. You stage whenever you want. Now it is Jim White in first. Ed McCulloch rolls forward and stages. Green light comes on. White close to the guardrail, but he pulls it out. Jim White advances to the Final Four. His time of 5:29. That's almost a 1/10 of a second slower than the time he recorded in his first round victory. The games that were played on the starting line were most costly to Jim White. Watch McCulloch in the far lane. There, you see the advantage he gained off the starting line. It almost paid off at the finish line. But McCulloch also slowed from his first round times until at the finish line, Jim White out there next to that guardrail, driving away from it, but still not backing off. You see some smoke coming out of the engine. There may have been problems on the run, but White's in the Final Four.
In only 5.29 seconds, there were really 3 separate stories, and it's starting with you challenging each other on the staging process.
Oh, I never challenge on the staging process.
Being challenged.
We just run our clutch a little bit different, and I know some drivers take longer than others to get ready, so I just don't like to heat my clutch up. Apparently, he wanted to take his time, and that's good. Ace is a good racer.
You came from behind, but you almost brought the wall with you.
Yeah, I got over there pretty close, and I even thought about having to turn this thing off, which I did not want to do. And at the last second, it got away from the wall, and we got to win. That's what we're here for.
Indeed.
Thank you, Steve.
And that win keeps the pressure on John Force. Facility known as Heartland Park, just south of Topeka, Kansas. It's been the scene of all kinds of excitement this weekend. In qualifying, Jim Murphy in the Holy Smokes car in the near lane was going off against Gordon Minio when a supercharger explosion lifted the bodies. The wind caught it and took it away.
Jim, that's got to be one strange sensation, the ultimate sunroof all of a sudden.
Exactly, Steve. It seemed to be on a pretty decent, it seemed to be moving okay, and I think it probably dropped a cylinder or two, and blower backfired. I'm not sure exactly, probably hydraulic and caught a valve, and off it came, and all of a sudden we were there with the body on, and all of a sudden it's sunny out.
Murphy was able to repair the damage and made it back for round number 1, where this man, Mark Oswald, beat him to earn the right to race Flash Gordon Minon here in round number 2. If that Pontiac Firebird looks familiar to you, it should. It is the former Blue Max of Raymond Beadle. Mark Oswald this season has driven 3 different cars. This one is owned by Jeff and Susan Bernstein, and it will be the last race for this car with Oswald at the wheel. He qualified in the number 2 spot with a great 5:23, while Gordon Minon came in at a fine 5:37. In round number 1, he raced Richard Hartman, who had qualified in the 10th spot in the Rebestas Oldsmobile, owned by Nick Bonenfanti. Both cars left the starting line on a strong run when